Someone who'd spent years building walls around his heart, but underneath remained capable of extraordinary compassion. David Parker had bet his son's life on a stranger's goodness, and somehow, impossibly, he'd been right. "Thank you," Michael whispered into the darkness, speaking to parents he'd never met. "Thank you for trusting me. I won't let you down. I promise." Noah stirred in his sleep, reaching out instinctively. Michael took his hand, and in that moment, Michael Chen understood that he hadn't saved Noah. Noah had saved him. One wrong number at 3 a.m., one desperate text from a terrified child, one decision to answer, to show up, to stay. That's all it took to transform two broken lives into one complete family.
The enormous ice sculpture behind the dessert table seemed to mock me with its frozen perfection while my world melted around me. Let me back up. 18 months earlier, I'd married Ryan Chen believing our love could survive anything, including his family's disapproval. I taught preschool at Sunflower Learning Center, a job that filled my heart but apparently embarrassed the Chen family to their core. Victoria, a retired attorney who'd spent 30 years in corporate law, made her feelings abundantly clear from our first meeting. "You work with children," she'd said during that initial dinner, her tone suggesting I'd admitted to something criminal. How quaint. Ryan deserves someone who can match his professional trajectory. Someone like Amanda. Ryan's ex-girlfriend, Amanda Lynn, was a pediatric surgeon, and Victoria mentioned her approximately twice per conversation, as if repetition might summon her back into Ryan's life. The first few months of marriage were a masterclass in subtle humiliation. Victoria would visit unannounced, always arriving exactly when I was leaving for my morning shift at Sunflower. "Oh, you're working today," she'd observe, examining my comfortable teaching clothes with visible disappointment. "I keep forgetting that you have that little job." Her emphasis on little made me feel microscopic. Family dinners became performances where I was the unwitting comic relief. Victoria would steer conversations toward Ryan's cases at his father's law firm, Emily's marketing career, and inevitably, Amanda's recent publication in a medical journal. When someone politely asked about my work, Victoria would interject before I could answer. "Sophia keeps herself busy with the children." At my mother-in-law's 60th birthday gala, she handed me an envelope in front of 100 guests. "A gift for the girl who couldn't measure up," Victoria announced from the podium, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light as she gestured toward me. The entire country club ballroom fell silent. Inside that cream-colored envelope were divorce papers, already signed by my husband. I enrolled in an online master's program in educational psychology, paying tuition from my modest salary while Ryan worked 80-hour weeks at Chen and Associates. Victoria's response when I mentioned my coursework was a thin smile. "Online education is certainly accessible. Though I suppose it doesn't carry quite the same weight as a traditional degree." The breaking point came 4 weeks before Victoria's birthday gala. I was preparing materials for my afternoon class when my phone rang with Ryan's mother's number. Before I could even say hello, Victoria's voice cut through. "Sophia, we need to discuss your future. Or rather, your lack of one." She'd called from the country club, surrounded by her tennis partners, and she didn't bother lowering her voice. "Ryan is being considered for junior partner. The firm is evaluating everything, including his personal life. Your current situation isn't helping his prospects. Have you considered that staying married might be selfish?" The words hit like physical blows. I stood in my empty classroom, surrounded by alphabet charts and finger paintings, while my mother-in-law suggested my existence was damaging my husband's career. Before I could formulate a response, she continued. "I've spoken with a very discreet attorney. We can handle this quietly, with minimal disruption to Ryan's professional reputation." That evening, I confronted Ryan in our apartment. He was reviewing case files at the dining table, his laptop screen reflecting blue light onto his exhausted face. When I told him about his mother's phone call, he didn't even look up. "She's just worried about the partnership. You know how important this is to the family firm." "But what about us?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What about our marriage?" Ryan finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was worse than anger. It was resignation. "Sophia, you're a wonderful person. But maybe Mom has a point. We're in different worlds. You're happy teaching preschool, and I need someone who understands the demands of corporate law." The apartment we shared suddenly felt like a stage set, pretty but hollow. I'd spent a year trying to become someone the Chen family could accept, taking extra courses, reading legal journals, attending firm events where partners' wives discussed charity galas and vacation homes while I smiled and nodded and felt increasingly invisible. That night, alone in our bedroom while Ryan slept on the couch, I made a decision. I opened my laptop and began applying to private schools across the state. My credentials were solid, my references from Sunflower were glowing, and my master's program was nearly complete. Victoria thought I was just a babysitter. I'd prove her wrong. The rejections came fast and brutal. Lakeside Academy required 5 years of private school experience. Westchester Prep wanted candidates with published research. Greenwich Day School needed someone fluent in Mandarin for their immersion program. Each automated response felt like Victoria's voice in my head, confirming what she'd always believed about my inadequacy. By the third week, I'd applied to 22 schools and received 19 rejections. Ryan noticed my distraction during the rare dinners we shared. "You've been on your computer a lot lately. Everything okay?" I wanted to tell him about the job search, about my desperate attempt to become someone worthy of the Chen name. Instead, I just nodded. "Just schoolwork. My thesis is due soon." He accepted this explanation without question, returning to his phone where Emily's texts about Victoria's upcoming gala kept lighting up the screen. "Mom wants us there early for photos. She's inviting some of Dad's old colleagues. Make sure you wear the navy suit." The financial pressure started subtly. Ryan began questioning my purchases, suggesting that until I finished my degree and found a real career, we should be more careful with money. He canceled my credit card, explaining it was just temporary budget management. Victoria, of course, approved completely when she heard. I continued my job search in secret, applying to schools I'd never heard of in cities I'd never visited. The teaching assistant position at Brooklyn Heights Montessori offered $42,000, which felt like fortune compared to my current salary. I didn't get past the phone screening. The curriculum coordinator role at Philadelphia Friends School required Quaker committee experience I didn't have. Then, 3 weeks before Victoria's gala, my phone rang with an unfamiliar Manhattan number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was another automated rejection. But something made me swipe to accept while I was organizing craft supplies in my classroom. "Hello, is this Sophia Martinez?" The woman's voice was warm and professional, carrying none of the dismissive tone I'd grown accustomed to hearing from hiring managers. "This is Caroline Edwards from Manhattan Preparatory Academy. I hope I'm calling at a good time." My heart stopped. Manhattan Prep was legendary. An institution where senators and CEOs sent their children, where starting salaries exceeded what Ryan made in his first year at the firm. I'd applied on a whim, never expecting even a form rejection. "We've reviewed your application and we're very impressed with your background," Caroline continued. "Your work at Sunflower, combined with your graduate studies in educational psychology, suggests exactly the kind of innovative thinking we value. Would you be available for a phone interview this week?" I scheduled the call for Wednesday afternoon, giving myself 2 days to research everything about Manhattan Prep's philosophy, faculty, and curriculum. The night before the interview, I barely slept, rehearsing answers to questions about classroom management, developmental theory, and educational innovation. The interview lasted 90 minutes. Caroline asked about my approach to social-emotional learning, my experience with diverse learners, and my vision for early childhood education in the 21st century. Every question played to my strengths, drawing on years of practical experience that Victoria dismissed as mere babysitting. 2 days before the gala, Caroline called again. "Sophia, I'm delighted to offer you a position as lead early childhood educator at Manhattan Preparatory Academy. The starting salary is $78,000 annually, with full benefits, professional development funding, and the opportunity to design our new preschool curriculum." I stood in the bathroom of the apartment I shared with Ryan, my hand over my mouth to muffle the sound of my shocked laughter. $78,000. More than twice my current salary. A position designing curriculum, not just implementing someone else's vision. At a school where Victoria's country club friends sent their grandchildren. The offer letter arrived via email within the hour. I printed 3 copies, folding one carefully into my purse. That evening, Ryan came home late from the office, barely acknowledging my presence as he microwaved leftovers and returned to his laptop. I almost told him about Manhattan Prep. almost showed him proof that his mother's assessment of my potential was completely wrong. But something held me back. Maybe it was the memory of his resigned expression when he'd agreed with Victoria's suggestion that our marriage was holding him back. Maybe it was 18 months of being treated like an embarrassing obligation rather than a partner. Maybe it was the thought of Victoria's face when she realized her babysitter daughter-in-law had just landed a position that would make her the envy of every parent at the country club. I decided to wait. Victoria's gala was in 2 days, and according to Emily's constant texts in the family group chat, it would be the social event of the season. Over 100 guests, including partners from Chen and Associates, Victoria's retired attorney friends, and various members of their country club social circle. The morning of the gala, I received another call from Caroline. "Sophia, I wanted to personally confirm that you've received all the onboarding materials. We're thrilled to have you joining our team. When can you start?" "Monday," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I can start Monday." After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, straighter spine, steadier gaze. I'd spent 18 months shrinking myself to fit into the Chen family's expectations. No more. I chose my outfit carefully for the gala. A navy dress that Victoria couldn't criticize as too casual or too flashy, paired with the simple pearl earrings my mother had given me when I graduated college. Professional enough for a woman about to take a $78,000 position, understated enough not to draw attention before the right moment. Ryan barely glanced at me as we drove to the country club. He was reviewing talking points his mother had sent about his recent case victories, prepared to perform for the assembled guests like a trained seal desperate for approval. The silence in the car felt heavy and final, like we were already divorced in every way except paperwork. The gala was exactly as ostentatious as I'd expected. The country club's main ballroom glittered with crystal and candlelight, every surface adorned with white roses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Guests in designer evening wear clustered around high-top tables, sipping champagne and discussing their recent vacations to the Amalfi Coast. Victoria held court near the gift table, resplendent in a silver gown that probably required its own zip code. She spotted us immediately, her smile brightening for Ryan while barely acknowledging my existence. "Darling, you look wonderful. And Sophia, how nice that you could make it." Her tone suggested my attendance was optional charity rather than family obligation. Emily materialized beside me, phone already positioned to capture whatever spectacle was about to unfold. She exchanged meaningful glances with Ryan, some silent sibling communication that excluded me completely. My stomach twisted with sudden certainty. They'd planned something. Tonight wasn't just Victoria's birthday celebration, it was a stage for my humiliation. The dinner portion of the evening passed in a blur of conversations where I was introduced as Ryan's wife who works with children, as if my identity required that apologetic qualifier. Victoria's friends made polite inquiries about my work before quickly pivoting to discuss their own daughters' careers in investment banking and commercial real estate. After dinner, Victoria ascended to a small podium near the ice sculpture. She tapped her champagne glass with a fork, the crystal ringing clear and commanding across the ballroom. "Distinguished guests, thank you for celebrating this milestone birthday with me. Tonight isn't just about looking back on 60 years. It's about clearing space for new beginnings." Her eyes found mine across the crowded room, and my chest tightened with recognition. This was it. Whatever they'd planned, it was happening now. "I want to acknowledge someone special tonight," Victoria continued, her voice carrying the courtroom authority of her legal career. "My daughter-in-law Sophia has been part of our family for 18 months. She's tried very hard to fit in, despite coming from such different circumstances." Her pause was deliberate, allowing the assembled guests to absorb the implication that my circumstances were somehow lesser. "In recognition of her efforts and in the spirit of new beginnings, I have a gift for her." Victoria produced the cream-colored envelope with the same flourish she probably used presenting evidence in court. "This represents clarity and freedom for everyone involved." The walk to the podium felt impossibly long. Every eye in the ballroom tracked my movement, 100 guests, watching what they assumed would be my devastation. Ryan's face was carefully blank, but his hand trembled slightly around his champagne glass. Emily's phone followed my every step, recording for posterity or perhaps for later entertainment in family group chats. Victoria extended the envelope with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "A gift for the girl who couldn't measure up," she said, loud enough for the front tables to hear clearly. I accepted the envelope, my hands perfectly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The paper was expensive, cream-colored with subtle embossing. Inside, I found exactly what I'd expected since Victoria's speech began. Dissolution of marriage paperwork, signed and dated, with Ryan's signature already affixed in blue ink. The ballroom held its collective breath. Someone's fork clinked against a plate, startlingly loud in the sudden silence. Victoria's smile widened, anticipating tears or pleas or the scene she'd orchestrated for maximum impact. Instead, I pulled a pen from my purse. The same pen I'd used to sign my contract with Manhattan Preparatory Academy 2 days earlier. Without hesitation, without drama, I signed my name on the designated line. The ink flowed smooth and permanent, ending 18 months of trying to become someone I was never meant to be. "Thank you," I said clearly, folding the papers and returning them to their envelope. "This is actually the most generous gift you could have given me." Victoria's triumphant expression flickered with confusion. Ryan leaned forward in his seat, clearly expecting more emotion from his soon-to-be ex-wife. Emily's phone wavered slightly, as if she wasn't sure whether to keep recording. I reached into my purse and withdrew my own envelope, the official letterhead from Manhattan Preparatory Academy visible even from the back tables. "Since we're sharing gifts tonight, I have some news of my own." My voice carried across the hushed ballroom with surprising strength. 3 days ago, I accepted a position as lead early childhood educator at Manhattan Preparatory Academy. The starting salary is $78,000 annually, with full benefits, professional development funding, and curriculum design responsibilities. The silence that followed was different now. Several guests leaned forward, recognition dawning on faces that knew exactly what Manhattan Prep represented. Victoria's friend Margaret gasped audibly. She'd spent years trying to get her grandchildren accepted into Manhattan Prep's preschool program. "I start Monday," I continued, my eyes finding Victoria's shocked face. "So thank you for the divorce papers. They've cleared the way for me to accept housing in Manhattan's Upper West Side, work with some of the country's most brilliant young minds, and build a career with people who value educational expertise over social status." The ballroom erupted. Not in gasps or scandalized whispers, but in applause. It started with a woman at the table nearest the podium, someone I recognized as Judge Patricia Morrison from Ryan's firm events. She stood, clapping deliberately, her expression somewhere between amusement and approval. Others joined her. Victoria's own friends, the ones who'd made polite conversation about my quaint teaching job, were applauding the fact that I'd just landed a position their grandchildren would benefit from. The irony was perfect and devastating. Ryan found his voice first. "Sophia, wait. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk about." "About what?" I interrupted, surprised by my own calm. "About how your mother planned this public humiliation as my birthday gift last year, but you all decided her 60th birthday would be a better venue? About how you signed divorce papers without even telling me? Or about how you've spent 18 months agreeing with everyone who said I wasn't good enough?" The judge was still standing, now joined by several other guests who seemed to be enjoying this reversal of Victoria's planned spectacle. One of them, an older woman in elegant emerald silk, raised her champagne glass. "To Sophia and her future at Manhattan Prep. My grandson starts in their preschool program this fall. I hope he's fortunate enough to have you as his teacher." Victoria had turned an alarming shade of pale beneath her professional makeup. The envelope containing divorce papers hung forgotten in her hand, the weapon that was supposed to destroy me now just evidence of her own cruelty. She'd expected tears and begging. Instead, she'd given me freedom I hadn't even known I wanted. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high, leaving behind 18 months of shrinking myself to fit spaces that were never meant for me. Behind me, I could hear the excited chatter of guests discussing Manhattan Prep's reputation, Victoria's miscalculation, and the delicious irony of her gift backfiring so spectacularly. The night air outside the country club felt cleaner somehow, crisp with possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez, my principal at Sunflower. She wasn't at the gala, but news traveled fast in certain circles. "Heard about Manhattan Prep. I'm so proud of you, and I'm going to miss you terribly. You were always meant for bigger things." Behind me, the country club doors opened. Emily emerged, her phone now lowered, her expression uncertain. "Sophia, I'm sorry. I thought. You thought it would be funny," I finished. "You thought watching me get humiliated would be entertaining. But here's what you didn't think about. Your mother just destroyed any chance of reconciliation between me and Ryan because she couldn't accept that my career path was different from her expectations. And now everyone at that party knows it. Emily had no response. She retreated back inside, leaving me alone in the parking lot with my purse, my signed divorce papers, and my Manhattan prep contract. The months that followed were transformative in ways I'd never imagined possible. Manhattan Preparatory Academy welcomed me with genuine warmth and professional respect. My classroom overlooked Central Park, filled with natural light and resources that made Sunflower's modest budget seem even more impressive in retrospect. The children I taught were brilliant and curious, their parents exactly the type of high-achieving professionals Victoria had always claimed I could never relate to. But here's what she'd never understood. Parents, regardless of their tax brackets or professional titles, all wanted the same thing for their children. They wanted educators who truly saw their kids, who understood child development, who could nurture confidence while setting appropriate boundaries. I thought. You thought it would be funny, I finished. You thought watching me get humiliated would be entertaining. But here's what you didn't think about. Your mother just destroyed any chance of reconciliation between me and Ryan because she couldn't accept that my career path was different from her expectations. And now everyone at that party knows it. Emily had no response. His promotion to junior partner had come through, but apparently his mother's birthday stunt had become legendary in their social circles. Several of the firm's partners had children or grandchildren at Manhattan Prep, and word of Victoria's public miscalculation had spread through country club gossip channels faster than any legal brief. Can we talk? His texts read. I made a mistake. I should have protected you from my family. I miss you. I never responded. The man who'd signed divorce papers without telling me, who'd agreed with his mother's assessment that I wasn't good enough, didn't deserve explanations or second chances. My silence said everything that needed saying. The real validation came 6 months after the gala. I was leading a workshop for parents on kindergarten readiness when Victoria herself appeared at the back of the auditorium. She wore her country club armor, designer suit and perfect hair, but her expression was oddly vulnerable. After the workshop ended, and parents dispersed with their handouts and new insights, Victoria approached slowly. She opened her mouth several times before managing to speak. You're very good at this. I know, I replied simply. I always was. You just couldn't see past your own expectations long enough to notice. She flinched at the truth of it. Ryan regrets how things ended. He wants to know if you'd consider. No. I interrupted. Whatever he regrets, whatever he wants, it doesn't matter anymore. You handed me divorce papers thinking you were taking something away from me. Instead, you freed me to become exactly who I was always meant to be. Victoria nodded slowly, something like respect flickering across her carefully maintained features. For what it's worth, you were right. About everything. And I was wrong. I could have been gracious. I could have accepted her belated apology with warmth and forgiveness. Instead, I simply said, yes, you were. And then I walked away, back to my classroom where children's artwork decorated walls, where my curriculum was changing young lives, where I was valued and respected, and exactly where I belonged. A year after Victoria's Gala, Manhattan Prep promoted me to Director of Early Childhood Programs. My salary increased to $95,000. I moved into a larger apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Hudson River. I published articles in educational journals and consulted for school districts redesigning their preschool programs. The divorced preschool teacher Victoria had tried to humiliate had built a career that exceeded every expectation, including my own. And the best part, the truly satisfying part, was that I'd done it without their approval, without their support, and certainly without their limited vision of what I could achieve. Sometimes I think about that cream-colored envelope, the divorce papers Victoria presented as an ending. She'd meant them as proof of my inadequacy, evidence that I'd never belonged in the Chen family's world. Instead, they became my beginning, the push I needed to stop seeking acceptance from people incapable of recognizing worth that didn't match their narrow definitions. Victoria was right about one thing that night. New beginnings were necessary. She just never imagined that the person most liberated by those papers would be me.